Hi there, it's Rose from the Painted Toad, and tonight we are painting the Luminous Lighthouse, which you can see right here. I painted a little bit earlier today. This one is fun and easy, and we're going to jump right in. If you want to get the tracer for this, you can get them through my website at the Painted Toad. So this is just a real simple shape here. Normally for the tracers, I recommend you print them out, and then you can cut them and trace them. So I'm going to trace it right on here. And if you are using a canvas, like I said, you would cut out the tracer and then trace around it. And we're just only worried about basic shapes here. You don't have to worry about all the windows and things like that. We'll add that later. I'm just going to have the sides slope down. So I actually am from Michigan, so we have, oops, I made that a little bit bigger. Oops, that's okay. I'm from Michigan, and we have a lot of lighthouses in Michigan because of the Great Lakes. So there's lots of lighthouses around. And though this one here isn't one in particular, actually near me there's one similar to this, but lighthouses are kind of cool. There's a lot of people in Michigan that are really into lighthouses. I'm sure there's people other places too. I'm just going to create a little grounding line here with my pencil, just so I know where the sky and the sea is going to meet. This doesn't have to be perfect. This is all going to be painted over. So first color tonight we're going to use is black, plain old black. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get some blue. I have some phthalo, if this is phthalocyanine blue, dark blue. Any shade of dark blue is fine for this. Phthalocyanine is just one of my favorites. It's kind of a long name, but it's just another name for dark blue, so don't let that intimidate you. And I'm going to continue with a flat brush here, and I'm going to do, let me do my edges first, just so they can be nice and clean. If you're working on a canvas, you really don't have to worry about this part because the canvas, you can just paint it. What I could do is I could tape these edges for the clean edge, but since this is just a little sample, I'm not too worried about that. I'm just going to bring that across the bottom. Okay, so the water is going to be in this area, and you can kind of see how our land is. So what we can do is I just take the side of this and I kind of bring my edge across like that, the edge of the paintbrush, and then I just kind of zigzag here. You can kind of do any little zigzaggy shape. And then this is going to be where the land is, and this is where the sea is. So where that zigzag line is kind of where they're going to meet. Okay, so I'm going to finish filling in my seawater. I'm going to come in here, and I have some of that dark blue, and I have some black. Now black goes a long way, so I'm going to dip my brush in a little bit of this black, but I'm going to wipe most of it off here because I know it's going to pick up a lot of black here. I don't want a ton of black. I'm going to go back into the blue, and then I'm going to darken this up. So I'm creating, and I'm using the edge of my brush again. I am creating a shade of blue here. So when we mix black with it, it's called a shade. With the black and the blue, I'm going to bring this down just a tad. And once again, I'm just using the edge of my brush here. So I get kind of a darker blue. Can you see that darkness coming down in there? I used a little bit of this cerulean blue. Okay, so I just created the shade with the blue, and now I'm going to come in here and I have some of this lighter blue, and I'm going to bring this in here and just kind of bring it along. I'm using the edge of my brush again and just kind of going back and forth bringing that color in. I can put some of it up here in the dark blue too. Those can kind of meld together a little bit. And then this one, I also added some little touches of white in there. So if you want to lighten it up even more, take a little bit of white paint. I got my giant white here because I will use a lot of white. And I'm just going to dip the edge. I don't want a ton of white. I'm going to wipe most of it off, so I just have a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of come in and brighten up some of these little waves here. Just kind of scrape it across there. And then we will come in later and do that edge. You can see I've got like the waves breaking over there. So we'll do that in a little bit. But we're gonna let this dry. And then what I'm going to do is start working over here on my sandy edge. So where our land is. And for that, I'm using some of this Naples yellow, which is, let me pull it out here. Oh, I already have it pulled out. It's this. It's kind of a sandy yellow. So you can use that. You can use any shade of browns or beiges, or, you know, I mean, if you wanted to do red or whatever tone you want for your land is totally fine. It's kind of up to you. Depends on where your lighthouse is. Is it in a rocky area? Is it in a sandy area? We have a lot of lighthouses in Michigan, and they're like all over the place. There's rocky edges, sandy edges, all of that. So use your imagination. Or if you have a certain lighthouse that you're thinking of, that you know of, there's some, you know, this one is just white, but there's some with stripes, there's red ones. There's a lot of people around Michigan that love lighthouses. It kind of comes with living by the Great Lakes. A lot of boaters. I think compared to something like Florida or something like that, Michigan has like the most boaters per, I don't know, something in the population. I heard something once about that. I'm going to bring this across. So I'm just pulling this this Naples yellow into the water edge, just a tad. So I'm going to take some of this Naples yellow, and then I'm going to do a tad more of the black. So you can kind of see where I did this color earlier. I'm just going to take some of this Naples yellow, and I'm going to use, I'll be good, and I'll use my stir stick. Sometimes I use my paintbrush, but the stir stick is better. I'm going to take a little bit of black, and I'm wiping most of that off, and then I'm going to mix it in here with the yellow. I'm going to go in with this brown that I've created. It's just a little bit of black with the Naples yellow, and just create some shadowy areas here along my beach edge, just like this. And I'm using the edge of my brush again. So let me bring this in. There we go. And then I'm also going to create a shadow on the other side of our lighthouse here. So it gives it a really cool effect. When you do the shadow, it just looks more real. So I'm getting the curvy part of the shadow, and then it's going to stretch out this way, so you can kind of see there where I'm pulling. And then I'll just take my mixed color here and add this in. Could probably make a little bit more. Let's see how much. I don't need a ton of it, but just to get that shadow to come in nice. Usually I use a lot more paint than that, but for this, I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to take just a little bit more of the black while this is still slightly wet, and just kind of mix it in. We'll get darker here. And if it's too dark, add some more of the yellow. And then last but not least, I'm going to add a little bit, actually I like that smooth look, but I like to add a little texture to the different parts of the beach. So you could go through with your brush and add some texture. And I'm just going to kind of dry brush it a little bit here. Just add a little, oop, pulled some blue in there. Not too worried about it, I'll fix it later. Just kind of dab and get some texture. So it's not all the same. So I have a nice vanilla. Whoa, where am I showing this? Okay, so you can use vanilla. You can take white and put some of that Naples yellow in. That's what I did for this tone here. But I'm just going to take a little bit of this vanilla, which is very similar in color. And I'm going to paint that onto my lighthouse. This craft paint is a little bit thinner, but it does flow nicely on the paper here. I don't know if you can tell in here, but this is a little bit lighter and this is a little bit darker. So this is how I achieved that. I'm going to take some whites and put on my brush, and I haven't cleaned my brush, don't need to worry about that. And then I am going to pull it across in a curved pattern. So let me pull it this way. I'm going to do my left hand just so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm just pulling, and I'm not going straight across like this. I'm kind of curving my brush. And the reason why is because I want this to look roundish. Let me see if I can do it from this angle so that you can actually see me. I'm going to do it on the other side as well. So right now I'm using white, but on the other side I'm going to use a little bit of gray so that we can get the shadow going here. The white is on this side to brighten it up, create another tint here. So our lighthouse looks luminous. Remember, it was a luminous lighthouse. That's the title of our painting. Luminous Lighthouse. So we want some light on that edge. I'm going to take a little bit up here as well. Curve that. Sorry if you can't see that. Let me make sure I'm angling my brush right. So I'm just doing a little bit here on this little cap. And then now that I've done the white side, I'm going to do the other side, and you'll be able to see the color a little bit better. You can make gray with black and white. I actually went out and bought some gray finally. I didn't have gray paint. So I'm going to use the gray that I bought. So this gray is kind of dark. And what I'm probably going to do, it's right there. Sorry, my palette's a mess here. I'm probably going to take a bit of the gray, but also maybe a touch of the white as well, just to lighten it up so it's not so dark. And that way, when I pull across this way, ooh, it almost looks a bit silvery. It's not silver though, it's neutral gray. So now you can see a little bit better. See the curvature I'm trying to get here? The curve is what's going to give it this roundish look. Oh, look what happened there. Did you see that black get just pulled through? That can happen. But you know what? I'm not going to worry about it because I might even include that in my lighthouse design. So, you know, you got to follow, like Bob Ross said, happy little accident. It might actually make this one rather interesting. Let's go with it. Let's see what happens. I'm going to pull that across, pull that across. There we go. So this one is definitely, you got definitely more of a shadow on that side with the gray. You can tone it a little bit more, like if you don't want as much gray in here, you can bring that cream back in while it's still wet and tone it down just a tad. I think I'm going to do that. I like the creamy look because it's painted. It's a painted lighthouse, so it's not all metal-sided. I don't want it to look too much like a metal-sided one. So I'm just kind of I'm taking the cream, putting it right over the wet gray to tone that down just a tad. This is the great thing about acrylic is you can just do this. You can work with it while it's still wet if you work quickly, or you can paint right over the top of it. That works too. And if you end up with a little line like that, let's kind of just paint over it and see what happens here. I think that's going to look kind of cool. That's going to be part of my design. I'm going to leave it in there. I'm going to do a little bit up here with the gray. Got plenty still on there. And then a little bit more cream again to tone it down. There we go. And I'm just using the same brush here. And then I'm also going to use that gray, a little bit of the light gray, to paint in where the light is going to be. So this is going to be our shiny light inside here. And for right now, I'm just painting it gray. We're going to go back. You can see a little blue on the other one. So I will be adding some blue on that. And I think that looks good. I'm going to touch up a couple spots on my lighthouse with the black that I still have. It's still wet. I'm going to take just a little bit here, bring this here, just kind of clean up that little edge where I came across, clean up this little edge where the brush cut over into the sky. And that's all it needs, is just those little touch-ups. Just on that side, because that was the way I was pulling my brush, so there we go. Okay, I'm going to let that dry, and while that's drying, I'm going to come in here. Let's add a little bit more black to my sky. Now I'm going to use a liner brush with some black paint to paint in some small rectangles, and these are going to be the window openings on my lighthouse. And a trick to note, I don't know if you can tell here, but I'm curving the bottom of the rectangle because this is on a curved structure. So when looking at it, these would look a little curved. I didn't curve them too much on the other one. I was doing that earlier with some of my younger students, so I kept it a little bit more simplified for them. And like I said, you could do any design you want. If you don't want to do the little windows and you'd rather do like a stripe pattern or something, be totally fine. I'm going to see how many. I might not put as many windows on this one because I have my little line here. So that's something a little different on this lighthouse. It's going to make this one unique. Another thing to note is the windows at the top are looking smaller than the ones at the bottom. And that's because from our vantage points, if we're looking up at a lighthouse that is much taller, the windows way up there are farther away, so they're going to look a little bit smaller, even though in reality they may all be the same size. They could be smaller, but that's just our point of view. That's how it works. Okay, I've got this little ledge here, so I'm going to do a different this a little bit different. This one had 5. This one's only going to have 4 windows. And I'm using my liner brush to paint this in. I'm going to just add, these were not really like windows, they were just kind of these little I don't know, riveted something or other, whatever you think you want to imagine it to be, just to give it some dimension, some texture, that kind of stuff. Make it look interesting. And then up here towards the top, I'm going to add some details. Now I'm not going to do every single line all the way through. I'm just going to give the impression of a line. So to do that, you just kind of drag a little bit of black across here. It doesn't have to go all the way across, but it'll give the impression that there is a line there or a surface there. A little uneven over on this side, but we'll just fix that. I'm going to bring this here. And I'm going to do some, let me just add, I'm going to add a little bit in here. Just, I don't know, make it a little different. Like there's little supports or something under that. This is going to be a walkway up there around the light. So there's my little light supports. And then I just did these lines, very slight lines going around each of the windows to give it somewhat of a sill. And I'm going to add a little detail up here. Probably just some lines here to show the edge of this a bit better. And then maybe there would be some little panels or something up here. Just something interesting up top to make it look cool. And then we need to add a little bit of blue. So I'm going to do some light blue. I'm going to keep working with the small brush here because we don't need a lot of blue. I'm going to take my light blue, and this was the cerulean blue, and I'm going to take a little bit of white here, and I'm going to paint in some bluish little squares here. This is where our lighthouse light is going to be shining from. So it's like we got these glass panels. It's really quite fascinating. We visited a couple lighthouses in Michigan. Like they do tours now, the old lighthouses, because most of them now are automatically operated. They still use a lot of the lighthouses because the ships still use them, but they don't have people, they don't have keepers living in the house anymore and turning the light on and off. It's all automated. So a lot of the old lighthouses have been turned into historical sites, and it's kind of cool because you can do tours and things like that and learn all about them and learn about the lighthouse keepers and the different families that lived there and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. In the center, I'm going to add my light, so we want it to be really brilliant here. I'm going to make it wide so that it's like on all sides. Sometimes they have these big, huge lights. They used to have a lot of mirrors because they used to use like candlelight, and eventually they used oil lamps in there to help illuminate so that the seafaring vessels, well, the lake-faring vessels in Michigan, lake-bearing, I don't know what I'm saying. Anyways, so that they could find their way and know where the good spots were and know their location, not only by the stars, but they used the lights, the different lights. They look different, and then they would know where they were because of the different lights on the lake. All right, so we got our light there. Now I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to come back and just touch up this final spot here. But while that's drying, I wanted to show you some really cool techniques for doing your stars. So the first technique, simple, it's a toothpick. I like using a toothpick rather than using a paintbrush to do stars because you can get a more consistent small dot. Sometimes the paintbrush wants to make a blob, which is really annoying when you're trying to make a nice little star dot. So I just dip it in the end of the paint and then dot, dot, dot. So toothpicks are awesome for doing stars. So I'm gonna do a bunch of stars in here. You just kind of keep dipping. The first star you put down is always going to be a little bit bigger because there's more paint on it, but then if you keep dabbing, you can get smaller dots. So you get a variety of dots that way. And this part takes kind of a long time, but I do have a quick tip for getting a lot of stars at once. So I'm going to do some of these with a toothpick, and then I'll show you my little tip in a minute. And then of course you can see a little shooting star here. If you want a little shooting star, those are super simple to do. I'm just going to take a little bit of white on the end here, maybe dab it, and then you can just go, and you go like that. You just drag it. Can you see that? Just drag it there, right here. And you can get a shooting star that way. Now the other thing I did on this one, I don't know if you can see it over the camera, I did different colors besides white. So stars are actually different colors anyways. So I'm also going to do, I have a really pretty, somewhere I have my pretty lavender. Where did it go? Ah, it got hidden behind blue. Why is blue over here? All right, I need to stick to my organization here, otherwise it's going to be all over the place. So this is a really pretty, it's just bright purple. This was a Royal Langnickel. Bright purple. Any light purple will work. I would recommend light purple over dark purple. Dark purple won't show up very much. So I'm going to do some little purple dots here with my Now I'm going to do some blue. I'm going to use that, I still have plenty. It's the cerulean blue. So I'm going to do some in the blue, and I still have some on here from when I did my water. I also did some pink dots. So let me see my pink. Oh, I still have a little bit of pink here. This is just a light magenta. So I'm going to do a couple, not a lot of pink, just a touch of them here and there. That is the one method. And then the other method that I like to use for this is to use an old brush or an old toothbrush like this one. Okay, so to use the old toothbrush, what you're going to do is you're going to dampen the brush a little bit. And my water's a little bit dirty, so it should be okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to dip it gently in your white paint or whatever color. So I'm just kind of dipping it in here. So I'm getting some paint on this. And then what I'm going to do is very carefully, I'm going to rake my thumb or finger across here and get it to spatter a little bit. So it's important to get it somewhat wet. And I'm trying to aim away from my lighthouse. Sometimes it's better to do this in your background first and then paint your stuff. But for now, this will work just fine. So I don't know if you can see on there, it gets a real concentrated scatter. If I wanted the Milky Way galaxy over here, I could kind of really squirt some of those. See how dense that gets now? So it kind of looks like the Milky Way. I'm going to keep that corner a little dense, like we've got the Milky Way galaxy. Lots of stars up in there, and then maybe a little down in here. We'll add some different starry areas. So I really like that. Look at that one. I mean, you can tell the difference. I did a lot more spatter on this one than the other one, and it does make a mess. So, which if you're working on canvas, it'll just get all over whatever. I actually just got it all over my computer and stuff. So, whoopsies. Anyways, just a really cool effect. Okay, last but not least, we're gonna finish up the details on the lighthouse here, and I'm just gonna do some outlining just to accentuate these little lights. I'm just gonna kind of go in here and add, I'm just gonna blob with my brush. Let me zoom in on that a little bit so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So I'm just taking my round brush and just adding little blobs of where the surf would be maybe breaking here if it crashed into the shore. So I'm gonna just add some surf. Maybe there'll be a little there. You can kind of, make it up as you go here. I think that's pretty good. It looks good enough. Let me zoom this back. Zoom it back. Unzoom it. What do you say? Unzoom? All right. Take care. Have a great night.